All right, so this is the time we call the Afterburn. So if you have a comment or question about today's teaching. All right, who wants to go first? Olivier.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Question about fear. So there is the we shall not walk in fear because we don't want to walk in punishment, versus contrasting that with the fear of Elohim. So it's the same word, don't apply the same, but could you maybe shed some highlight the difference between the two?
Yeah, basically you're going to have to go back and listen to Fear of Yahweh teaching. I'll do it quickly again. The deal is, fear of Yahweh is awe and reverence and respect and a desire not to disappoint. So a fear of disappointing or letting him down. It's not a fear of something blowing up or going wrong or ending up in a car accident or something or getting a disease or something. It's an awe and reverence and respect, and because you love him so much, you want to, the one thing you don't want is to disappoint him. So that's, I guess, the only thing you'd be quote unquote afraid of, all right? And so that's very different than the fears that we have in our lives about our jobs, about our health, about our families, about all these things that are going on in our lives. You know, Yeshua tries to get that across to us in Matthew when he talks about, don't be afraid of all these different things. You can't add a hair to your head or anything, an inch to your height or whatever. Here we go, Matthew 6. So Matthew 6, and he says, so why do you worry? He goes, why do you worry? He says, because of this I say to you, do not worry about your life. Verse 25, what you shall eat or drink, or about your body, what you shall put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look, the birds of the heavens, for they neither sow nor reap nor gather into storehouses, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not worth more than them? And which of you by worrying is able to add 1 cubit to his life? So why do you worry about clothing? Note well the lilies of the field, how they grow and they neither toil nor spin. And yet even Solomon, in all his esteem, wasn't dressed like one of these. But if Elohim so clothes the grass of the field, which exists today and tomorrow thrown into the furnace, how much more you of little belief, you of little faith. Do not worry then, saying, what are we going to eat? What are we going to drink? What shall we wear? Because the nations all seek after these things, the Gentiles. He says, your heavenly Father knows that you need these things. He says, but fear Yahweh. He says, seek first the reign of Elohim and his righteousness, and all these other things shall be added to you. Okay, don't worry then about tomorrow. Tomorrow has its own worries. Each day has enough evil of itself. So yes, the word fear is the same word, but fear when fearing Elohim is not the same as fear when fearing situations in our life. Just like blessing you is not the same as blessing him. When he blesses you, it's different than when you bless him. Same word, it just means something different in that situation. When we fear him, we should not be, as the Christians, especially the Catholics used to teach, the idea of somehow he's going to come and zap you and burn you in hell and torture you forever. So you have to be afraid of him like that. No, he doesn't want you to be afraid of him like that. He wants you to have such awe, respect, reverence, and love for him that what you're really afraid of is him looking down at you like, I can't believe you just did that. And just like shaking his head, looking at you like, I'm so disappointed in you. That's what you're afraid of. And I explain that in a lot of detail in the Fear of Yahweh teaching. Okay, Kathy.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Rabbi.
Oh, by the way, this isn't picking on Olivier. This is for all of you. For all of you that want deeper, and all of you that want to go find other things and other teachers and other stuff. Look, my teaching that I give you, or his teaching that comes out of my mouth, you're supposed to listen to it enough times so that you have a working, continuously accessible knowledge of it. So that had you listened to that teaching enough, you wouldn't have to ask the questions. I'm not picking on you, but a lot of people have the same problem, okay? You should not have these questions if you've listened to the teachings enough. It should now be a part of you to understand, as most of the teachings are to reset the lexicon. So do you know what things mean scripturally? And so you should know. Because if you listen to the teaching enough times, then you should now understand it so that you can do it. In other words, apply it in your life as needed, as appropriate. And of course, if you're going to now get it to the ministry level, you should do level 3 and 4, which is be able to defend it and teach it. But all of you have to be able to do the first 2 levels. You should understand the material and be applying it appropriately in your life. in which case you would understand those two things. So I'm not picking on you. It's a great example, though. If you listen to the teaching enough, you'd know that, right? So that you would not have to ask these kinds of questions. People ask questions about tithing. Obviously, you haven't listened to the teaching enough. They still haven't heard enough about the mechanics. Because whenever anybody asks a question and I tell them the teaching to go to, either A, you didn't listen to it ever, which is okay, you've never heard it before, or B, you haven't heard it enough. Because somehow you missed it because it's in the teaching I told you to go back to, right? So you have your work cut out to you. It's one thing to hear a teaching. It's another thing to study the teaching. How many of you want to be discipled? You don't have to put your hands up. A lot of you want to be discipled. You know what I would make you do if we were discipling? Study the teaching. And then I would test you and make sure that you know the teaching front and back, up and down, and are applying it in your life. Okay? That's discipleship. So if you want to disciple, you can start right now. Go home when you go home, take teachings and study them. Study them, meaning so you know that you know what's in that teaching. All right? And if you have questions, call and ask so that you make sure you're understanding it correctly. But study the teachings. All right, Kathy.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom. So I hope I'm not going to fall in the same category. But this was also, we're trying to change from what we are into what he is. The fear and the doubt, that's perfect love. There's no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear because fear holds punishment. And in what the Father has been showing me in this season of my life, he's been showing me the Tameh. He's been showing me my Nesa Hara. And I praise him for that, because how am I supposed to fix it if I don't even see the depth of it?
All right, hold on. So she said that he sees her Tameh, which is the uncleanness, and her Yetzer Hara, which is the evil inclination, her desire to do things she shouldn't do. Okay?
My natural bent.
I want to just define that for people so they know what you're saying.
Okay. Okay. So in that, I had a very precious time with him, a 24-hour time, and I got into a place of hopelessness because Yeshua is perfect. I'm clearly not. How am I ever going to get there? And in reading the scriptures and going through Psalms and confessing and seeing what he was showing me, I thought I had found some hope, and I shared it with sisters. So I found it. Well, I found a lot of hope. But when I got to Psalm 34,
right,
that gave me a lot of hope, because I'm crushed, I'm brokenhearted, I'm distressed over my delusion of who I was and who I really am, according to his standard. And when I got to the Sadiq, 34:17, well, all of it, but the righteous cried out, and Yahweh heard and delivered them out of all their distresses. Kuf, Yahweh is near to the brokenhearted and saves those whose spirit is crushed. Then I got to Resh, and I said, wow, many are the evils of the righteous, but Yahweh delivers them out of them all. And that gave me great hope, but I was understanding evils in that as my Nesa Hara when I get off the path, and that he corrects me and I get back on, and he delivers me, but that the righteous, the ones seeking him, could be there when we realize we're off and his rod and his staff redirects us. But a sister told me that means actually calamities. So that's my question to you. Should I take, because I'm thinking the righteous, the Sadiq, they're perfect. Well, okay, Job was almost perfect. Noah, all these witnesses of doing right in their generations, they weren't perfect, but they were considered Sadiq. So they made mistakes. They chose wrong. They didn't get counsel. They went their own way. But they were calling him righteous. So what does evil mean there? Does it just mean the calamities that are coming upon me, the struggles that I have, or can I have hope in this verse?
All right. Well, first of all, let's redefine some of the terms here. We have to have a right expectation, or understand correctly his expectation, okay? He does not, please everyone embrace this, right? He does not expect you to be perfect. There's no expectation that you will ever be perfect. What he expects is you to want to be perfect. He expects you to make the effort to be perfect. And he expects you to make it with all your heart being utmost. And he expects that when you're not perfect, you repent and make teshuvah and get back in the business of attempting to be perfect. All right? So when you fall short, don't ever hold up against a standard as if he has a standard that you're going to at some point be perfect or you're not going to make it, because you're not going to get there. He wants to see in Deuteronomy 8, right, in verse 2, whether it's in your heart to keep his commands. Do you want to be perfect? Are you complacent about when you fall short, or does it really bother you? It has to really bother you when you fall short. Not bother you like where you beat yourself up, but bother you saying, man, I did it again. I got to get this right. I'm going to get on my knee. Father, I'm sorry I did it again, but I'm going to try harder. Okay? He wants to see your setting your face and your determination to get this right. All right? And so there's encouragement in this verse. Now, as far as referring to the tzaddik, in the scripture, it's not generally referring to the tzaddik, meaning the perfect tzaddik, the one that the Jewish sages would refer to. It's talking about someone who's making the effort to be righteous. And that person who makes the effort to be righteous can cry out because, after all, they're going to find themselves in struggles and things. But, you are righteous when you obey, and then you make a mistake. But it's also righteous when you teshuvah. It's righteous to repent, he said, because it's something he commands us to do. And he hears you when you cry out, okay? So let's not hold into that idea of the tzaddik, which, we might say Job was a tzaddik, and they couldn't find anything wrong with him. Hasatan said, I don't know, I got nothing I can do with this guy. Okay, there's, according to the sages, they believe there's like one per generation, or just a small handful of them. So we're not talking about something that would be written in scriptures that's an attainable thing that most people would be expected to attain. It would be the unicorn of the generation. You know what I'm saying? It would not be the expectation that everybody would get there. But it's the righteous in effort, the ones who are trying to be right, and then when they're wrong, fix it and then get back on the path to be right. Their cries are heard. Does that help?
Very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
good. Okay. See, we have to really be careful that we don't have a wrong expectation of what he expects, or a wrong expectation of what we should expect of ourselves. But if we think he expects something that we can't ever get to, we're missing the point, because he wouldn't call you to something you can't do. You can't be perfect. It's just not going to happen. But you can respond perfectly to being imperfect. Does that make any sense? All right? That you can be perfect at. In other words, you mess up and then you own it and you fix it and you repent and you get back on the path. You can do that perfectly. Because the only way not to do that perfectly is just to not do it, right? Not repent. And then now you're stuck off the path. All right, Michael.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
And thank you, Rabbi. So when you were teaching today and you got to the second to last verse 20, you forget about the camera in my house. You have a camera in my brain. Because right when you said the thing about authority, I was thinking that right before you said that, because I know that we love him because he first loved us. And that's the verse before, verse 19. But we've been talking this whole time, this whole teaching, about what love and Torah is. And you've told us that his love language is obedience. And obedience requires the authority structures. So when people come here, and first of all, if they come here and you're not their anointed appointed and they refuse to accept that you are their anointed appointed, I don't even know why they're here. but that has happened before. And but there are people who come here and they say, "Oh, he's my anointed appointed. He was sent here by Yahweh," and then they get upset about something you said. And they leave, and logically to me, it occurs like if he was the anointed appointed that you thought of Yahweh, and then you left him, you left Yahweh. So that's kind of a big thing. And then, but I've heard parents before say things like to their children, like, "I wish you had an owner's manual." But Elohim gave us the greatest thing, because the child is only with us for 20 years and then they move out. Well, I guess some families it's a little longer, but should be 20. But Elohim is forever. And if we're trying to spend forever with him, he gave us this great gift, because he gave us here the entire manual for how to be with Elohim. This is the contract. So there's some case study in here. There's some history in here. There's terms and conditions, and how to fix it when you mess it up, and what's going to happen if you get it right, and what's going to happen if you don't.
Amen. Look, I'm got to think how I want to say this. I want this to come across in a right way, and I want it to sound arrogant. I don't want it to sound in any way, where it's a prideful thing. I think there's a problem that the world has grown into, where they don't know what an anointed appointed is. There's a lot of people that have claimed to be over the years and weren't. And there's a lot of teachers. There's always been plenty of leaders and teachers out there. And so you've come to learn and believe that they were somewhat interchangeable. You didn't like one, you just go find another one. And because after all, they were just a tool in the toolbox to some little degree, as opposed to someone actually having authority. And so I don't think that we generally understand that, because we just really haven't experienced it or been expected to react or respond to someone that way before. And so, yet Paul tells us about those people, and he says we're supposed to have them until, and we haven't gotten to the until yet in Ephesians 4, right, the fivefold guys. And yet, how do you know if someone is, and if they are, how are you supposed to interact with that person? And what if I don't like them? What if I don't like them or don't respect them on some level or something? Then what do I do? This is not easy. This is a tough thing for a lot of people to try to figure out. And I understand why Michael said what he said. He said, look, if you shouldn't be here, at least certainly not moving here. I mean, why would you move here unless you really believed that there was an anointed, appointed person here, and as one of the reasons to be here? Not that that's the only reason to come. You come for the fellowship and the rest of the body. But you're also coming to a place that has a structure, and that structure is something you're going to be expected to be submitted in to whatever level. And I know there's this fear, and that's really where this whole problem comes, the fear of being controlled and manipulated and neglected, and somebody inserting themselves in your lives in areas they shouldn't be. And we really don't have any interest in doing any of that, okay? As a matter of fact, there are people that would like us to do it, and we won't do it. Billy will tell you that. There are people that really would like us to be way more involved in their lives, and they get mad because we won't. And so that fear doesn't need to be there, because we are not going to behave that way. All right? When you don't listen, the only person you hurt is you. It doesn't hurt me. It doesn't affect the ministry at all. We don't care when it comes to that, if you understand what I'm saying. The advice is given because it will help you. And you're not doing it will only hurt you. It only hurts us when you come and continually counsel about the same thing we told you to do that you're not listening. Then we get frustrated that you're wasting our time when somebody else could be counseling, because why would we waste our time with you if you're not going to listen? Okay? Now, don't listen to me incorrectly there. I only said you'd be a waste of time, because somebody think, Robert's going to think that what I have to do is a waste of time. Only if you're not planning to listen. Okay? If you're going to look for counsel and not listen, you are wasting your time and mine, and Billy's or Tom's or anybody else you're going to be talking to, okay? You're not being genuine in there, so it's a waste of time. We're going to pour out everything we can to be a channel of the Creator to give you counsel with the expectation that if you do it, it will help. And then when you don't do it and life gets worse or stays just as bad or whatever, and you come back for more counsel and we say, well, did you do what we say? And you say, no. And then we sit there and look at you like, why not? And then you get mad because we put you in the crying corner. We need to have that table like hazmat sprayed every other day, because people end up snotting and crying and just, it's terrible. And it's almost always because they're dealing with something in their life that they don't want to deal with. And so then they're crying because they don't want to deal with it. Not just because it's awful or so challenging, but they are so dead set against actually doing anything about it. And when we give them the counsel, and we'll get strong with them, like what I tell you last time and the 3 times before that, you still don't do it, what do you expect to happen? I'm like, all right, whatever. Cry. Then they look at me like, you cold-hearted whatever. Fill in the word. What do you want me to do? I can't fix it for you. You have to do it. But you're not going to do it if you're not submitted to this structure and trusting it. Go talk to the people like Michael, who, believe me, when Michael and Ashley have come to us, they have not always done everything we said, and it's not always gone completely like wonderfully tickle feather time, okay? But they've gotten the results because they were willing to take that and go and do what they needed to do. You could ask any of these guys, they'll tell you that. And sometimes they actually come in and say, I need both feet, because I usually say, which foot do you want, the right or the left? Yeah, Ashley will do that sometimes. Because they know they need somebody to go and smack them a little bit and say, wake up, you need to fix this, or you're not looking at it right. But are you willing to do that? Do you have the humility to do that? Are you willing to submit to that? But it's not going to happen until you see somebody in that role. Not everybody saw Yeshua as he was. That's why they didn't all accept him and they didn't all follow him. Not everybody listened to Paul or Peter or John or the rest of them or James, right? Because they didn't see them as who they were. And you guys want there to be people like that today. And then if you found one, would you even know what to do? Oh, would you expect that they would be like some amazing person that you would love and agree with everything they said and did, and you wouldn't have any problem with their personality? Really? I find that really hard to believe. I think you wouldn't love Paul. I don't think you'd love Peter either. You might love John. John sounds like a big teddy bear, okay? But you might not like the fact that he doesn't get in your face as much, although he does tell everybody who says that they do this and this that they're liars, so he's pretty strong there, okay? But I don't think that you'd love some of the things that come out of some of these guys personality-wise. And then you sit there looking at me going, well, you know. And then somebody else would get up there like Billy or somebody go, oh, I like that better. So you haven't seen him in private counseling. His temper's worse than mine. So is Rabbi Thomas, for that matter. Everybody's susceptible to these things. But, you always have that grass is greener thing, right? Oh, I'll just go. And then you realize, wait a minute, he sounds like Rabbi now. And he'll quote me right back at you, and he'll ask you if you did the things and everything else, and you'll be like, because you're trying to get around it. Can't get around it. Because they're discipling. You know what that means? They're going to sound like me. That's what they're supposed to do. All right? All right, Steve.
All right. Since you're on it, I'm going to go backwards, because when you talked near the end about getting counsel, one of the areas I thought you didn't mention is I think some people don't come because they don't want to be told they're wrong in where they are.
Well, I think that's part of it, but I think more they know they're wrong, but they don't want to hear it. They don't want confirmation from somebody else, and then they're going to have to then listen to the guidance on how to fix it. Okay, so.
Alrighty. And then in the beginning, you talked in 7 and 8 about relationship, loving us or loving him and each other. And in relationships, we hold on to justifications or reasons for them, either to have or avoid them. And yet, we hold those justifications or reasons like it's a prize. So I think we should look at those more closely, because those things could be what's keeping us from being in Torah or following Torah more correctly, because we hold on more dearly the justifications or reasons than we do Torah.
Agreed. Well said.
Okay, and then in 9, it said, in order that we might live through him, but we can't do that because it only applies if we do what's required. And then we can live through him. And the other thing I had was, in 17, you talked about having the boldness. Now, that's the boldness. We know we did all we could that was asked of us so we could stand in judgment and be bold knowing that we did everything we could. That's the boldness?
Correct. Thank you, Steve. Well said. All right, we got one more here, then we're going to go to you, Rob, after this, okay? And I don't remember your first name.
Heather.
Heather.
Heather
okay.
Blue of the House of Blues.
I'm not going to touch that.
So if I may, I just want to, I have a question, but first I would like to give a praise. So we had Michael and Ashley at our house last week, and they had a little situation, and we watched Constantine and Adar for a short time while they went to the doctor. And, if you want a little insight into how people are as parents, just spend a little bit of private time with their children, and you can get a lot of insight from that. But I just want to lift them up. I not ever watching their kids before and not knowing their kids at all. It was early in the morning, and I asked Constantine, I'm like, have you eaten? Do you want anything to eat? I got some Fruit Loops, And he says, well, do you have anything healthy? And I said, you don't like Fruit Loops? And he says, I love Fruit Loops, but I think we should eat healthy for Yahweh. And I said, do you want some apple slices? And he says, yes, I would rather have some apple slices. And he, I made them for Adar too. So he was just, that situation says a lot. That was out of his own mouth without any prompting and
Amen.
Taking care of his little sister. So that was a huge blessing to me. So my question is concerning verse 7 and also verse 11 and verse 21. So they kind of run along the same theme there. Beloved ones, let us love one another because love is of Elohim, and everyone who loves has been born of Elohim and knows Elohim. So when he's talking, beloved ones, let us love one another. Coming out of the Christian church, pretty much all of John is used to really push, love everyone and work really hard at showing the love of Christ to everyone, which I don't have a problem doing, but it's almost like you're kind of guilted into not doing enough. And, this says, love one another. So in context, is John mostly talking about the community of covenanted Israelites?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So it's not
Not that you don't treat people who are not covenanted also in an appropriate way, but it's saying is this love, which is a Torah-based thing. When it says that, I didn't mention this, but when you mentioned it, it kind of brings it out. When it says love is of Elohim, which means that it's defined by. He defines what love is. And so the love that John's talking about is the love that Torah teaches us, which is a community-based, covenanted-based thing. You can still treat people lovingly and politely and respectfully outside of the covenant, but this is a level of laying down your life for each other in a whole different depth of love that's community love. Just like you have friend love, you got erotic love, and you've got, agape or God level love. This is him trying to explain, this is covenant community love, not necessarily what we expect to do for everybody out there, although we don't treat them badly, But this is a high level of love that you would treat each other.
Okay.
Okay?
Got it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And you continue our color confusion that we have here in our body. We have a brown family that's white, a red family that was black, a blue family that's white, a white family that was yellow. So, we just... Nobody actually has a name and their skin color matches their name. It's just very funny how we have that, so... She said, I'm glad I'm not blue. It was just funny how we had people with last names that were colors and they didn't have colors that matched them. It was just the funniest thing. So, anyway, live stream. You guys get the last 30 minutes here.
All right. Ashley Williams, 1 John 4:20. How do you love a brother that doesn't want a relationship with you? And Pete and Brenda is kind of there. Does loving our brother mean that we have to have the warm and fuzzies for the people we are in opposition to?
No, look, love is defined by what? The Torah, right? So you treat the person that you're treating, what is the appropriate behavior to that person based on your relationship, okay? So you and I are acquaintances. I know you, you know me. At least we know who each other is, but we don't really know each other very well. I treat you in a certain way. You and I are like besties, so to speak, or whatever, and we're very close. I treat you in another level, okay? You and I are in the body and don't really like each other very much. For whatever reason, we irritate each other at this point. I still have to treat you with love because I have to even love an enemy, but I'm not going to be applying all of the various things to you that I might apply to the best friend or apply to a spouse or apply. This love gets expressed in different ways according to Torah based on your relationship or the depth of your relationship. And so this is encouraging us to get to that depth of relationship with each other, to get through the things that keep us from having that. Sometimes it's just a matter of not spending the time. I mean, there's a bunch of you out there I don't know very well just because we haven't spent much time together. Okay? And there's others who I've spent a lot of time with, and so I know you very well, and don't like you anyway, but I like, so I'm teasing. But I spent a lot of time, and I know you a lot better, and so I'm able to express that love in a different way, all right? Because it would be a little weird for someone to express a whole lot of love towards you that you would have a level of familiarity that you don't really have with that person. That would be very uncomfortable and inappropriate, right? Unless you have that level of familiarity. And so those things can be developed. So John thinks we should all have that with everybody by working in that direction. Does that make sense? Okay, so hopefully that answers the question. We should be striving to that level of love really genuinely for each other where we literally see each other as family. And some of you are doing that with some of you, all right? Some of you are doing that with some others of you, because you've spent the time to get to know each other well enough to do that. But you have to spend the time to do that, all right? Because once you spend enough time with somebody, you'll love them in spite of their irritating qualities. And they all have them, okay? But if you don't know them that well, the irritating qualities are enough to keep your arm's length and keep you away because you haven't spent enough time to get the other qualities a chance to shine, okay? And so, I was always that person, by the way, like in college and in high school, I remember, where I didn't make very good first impressions. I know you're shocked, okay? So I had many really close friends who were very, very free to tell people they hated me when they first met me, so okay? Or didn't like me on whatever level when they first met me. But yet they were very close friends to me at that point. See, a lot of you could be really close friends with some of the people you're not really liking that much at the moment if you would really get to know each other. And that's part of the thing, okay? But you have to get to know each other so you can see all the wonderful qualities that you're not seeing right this second because the other thing is irritating you to the point where you can't see it, all right? And so just kind of keep that in mind. And so, I like that as a testimony because I'm not really proud of the fact that I didn't make good first impressions, but I could appreciate that's a good example to people. Say, but some of the people, and I didn't realize this till later on as we were friends and they came up and said, by the way, I really couldn't stand you when I first met you. I was like, gee, thanks. Same back at you. All right, so, and I still don't like you. No, so, But that's only because you guys know how I like to jab back and forth verbally, and so you know I said something. And immediately. No, but it was very humbling because I appreciated that the person gave me the time to show other parts and aspects so that they ended up becoming good friends with me. You see? So it was a lesson that I then learned when I met people also to think, well, maybe I'm not really that excited about this person in a relationship, but maybe if I give them time, it'll change. Okay? And so that's part of the important thing there. Okay, go ahead, Rob.
From Yaakov Yudin, how do we learn to trust leadership so we can counsel about embarrassing or shameful problems when there was never anyone trustworthy in our life? And someone else asked, is being embarrassed the same as being prideful when it comes to getting counsel? Says, I'm afraid the leadership will think that I'm just disgusted.
Okay, let me answer both of those. They're both simple. Okay, Yaakov and all of you, you have to just go ahead and stick your big toe in there. You just got to try it. You're never going to know until you try it. Okay, so to Yaakov, well, how can you learn to trust somebody if you never trusted? Well, you got to try it. You just got to step out there and try it, okay? I mean, let's say a lot of you had this problem when you were younger, right? You liked somebody and it didn't go well, and you liked somebody, it didn't go well. And then you know what? You could have stopped right there and said, this is no good, I'm never going to try again. Or you could realize, I just didn't find the right person, so I have to try, right? Well, the same thing with counsel. Maybe you've tried counseling once or twice and it didn't go well. That doesn't mean that the thing is a problem, the person implementing it was the problem, okay? I've sent some people for counseling where they went for professional counseling and the counselor fell asleep on them. That wasn't good counseling. And it wasn't because they were so boring, it was just a bad counselor, okay? I'm just saying, you only know by trying. These people out here, you also have testimony. So the person that's asking that question, okay, Yaakov, do you give any credence to the testimony that people say who've done the counseling? Does it have any credibility with you? Then that's also motivation to maybe give it a try. But you have to try. There's no other way to know. You have to taste of it for yourself. Otherwise, you won't know. It's the only way to know, okay? And I can't tell you how many people come into the counseling, the first thing they tell me is, I don't want to be here. I didn't want to be here. I really don't know what to do or what to start, but I know I'm supposed to be here. Something in those lines, right? All right, and the second question was, we are not new, okay, as a ministry. So there's almost nothing that you can say that will disgust us or shock us or anything. As a matter of fact, almost everybody that thinks they have something that's on that level isn't even close, all right? The people that do actually have stuff on that level, they know it is. They're not worried about shocking us. They're hoping that we'll just handle it because they need to get it out, and that stuff is on that level. But most of the people that are so super embarrassed, I don't want to laugh, and I try hard to not laugh when they're sharing this horrible thing that's nothing. But to them, it's horrible. And so I'm not belittling it, but the way they kind of built up the presentation, I was ready for something, I was waiting for like a nuclear bomb and it was a firecracker. You know what I'm saying? I was like, that was it? But in their life, it was a nuclear bomb and they were embarrassed by it and it was all kinds of things. I said, you have no idea the stuff I've heard, okay? And so no, don't be embarrassed. And don't think that I'm gonna be all disgusted and look at you. You're gonna be just like everybody else that I've dealt with, okay? On some level. Either because yours will be less or it'll be more, but I've heard all of it, as you can, I mean, if I hear something I've never heard before, it's never on a level I've never heard before. It's just a similar thing as far as level, but it's just an item I never heard before. But usually it's a twist on a theme of some sort, whatever that theme was, whether it was being in witchcraft and demonism and some other thing, or it could have been in terms of sexual abuses and physical abuses or some other crime-related thing or some sort of, I mean, whatever it is, we've heard it, okay? We've had men and women raped by family members and who've done other terrible things, and we've had people that were in, little sexual rituals and demonic rituals and things that were, you can't believe, some of you can, but we've heard all of that. So don't think that you're gonna share something, we're just gonna look at you differently from then on. Actually, you know what, we will. We'll have a little bit of an appreciation that you came. And we actually will look at you in a positive way. But we're not going to be like tainted now by knowing that you had that experience. All of you have had stuff. Most of you just won't share it. And so, as a matter of fact, the ones who won't share it, I'm more worried about. Okay, they're the ones that have really got some stuff. They just don't want to talk about it. But you need to talk about it and get some help. And like I said, I've worked with some people with some really serious stuff. But I think it's very freeing. If you're a guy and you can realize you can come and deal with your pornography problem. Because almost every guy has the problem and nobody wants to talk about it. Because they're embarrassed. Well, you need to talk about it and get some help. Okay, whatever it is that you're going with and dealing with, you should be able to come and talk about it. The woman, the same thing. Women have that problem, by the way, just as much as the men do. They just don't talk about it. Okay? And so, whatever the problem is, selfishness, pride, fears, insecurities, abuse, control, disrespect, usurping authority. These are all things everybody deals with. And these are all the things that we deal with in counseling all the time, And so just come and counsel. And please don't worry about what we're going to think of you. We're only going to think good things that you made the effort to counsel. Knowing whatever it is that you did is not going to make me think of you any less. Because I already assume that you've done things. We all have. So just the fact that I don't know what it is doesn't change anything. And I don't sit around trying to guess either. I bet you're one of those, It's a lot of laughs in the leadership councils. What do you think so-and-so's thing is? No, I'm kidding. We don't do that. Okay? All of us have secrets, I guess, or whatever, things that we don't want to share because they're things that happen in our life that we're not proud of, right? And some of that's okay never to talk about because you've handled it and processed it, but some of it is still causing problems in your life. That's the stuff you need to deal with, all right? I had a lady who left this congregation, got really angry with me because I told her she'd never really dealt with this thing that happened when she was 5 or 7 or whatever it was, where a family member had abused her. She said, "How dare you tell me I've never dealt with it? I've been in therapy this many times and done this many things." But you still haven't dealt with it. It's still affecting you as same as it did, and you're 70 years old. Yes, you've gone and done a bunch of things, but you still haven't dealt with it. Okay? It'd be like me saying that I have a weight problem and I keep buying gym memberships. If I don't go, right? So she went and got therapy. Who knows if she listened to anything that they said. It clearly didn't have the effect. And I said to her, your problem is you're still not addressing the problem. Oh yeah, you did, some action. You ran around and took therapy, took some medications and everything, but you didn't really deal with whatever it was. That's why it's still there. If you deal with it, it goes away. But you have to deal with it, okay? You can sit, Janet's a professional, you can go sit with Janet all you want. If you don't deal with it though, she can't help you. She can give you all kinds of things to do, but she can't help you unless you take it and do it. And I tell people every time they counsel with me, everything I tell them, I say, what I just told you will work, but only if you do it. If you don't do it, it won't work. Don't tell me it didn't work and you didn't do it. I promise you it'll work. I don't give you anything that won't work. Well, that sounds pretty cocky. No, I only give you stuff I know will work. And if I'm not sure that I have anything that'll work for you, I'll tell you I don't think anything will. But if I tell you this will work, it will work. But you have to do it. And you have to do it the full way I told you to do it. For as long as I told you to do it. Because people try for 2 days when I told you it was going to take 2 months. Okay, so it's not going to work in 2 days. And they say, I tried it, it didn't work. Well, what'd you do? And they tell me, I'm like, well, that's not what I told you to do. But you have to do it. So please don't be embarrassed and shy to come. Okay? It's not like we've only been doing this for a few minutes. Look, if you had come to me in 1999, I had no experience and hadn't heard nothing. Then maybe, and even then you shouldn't have been embarrassed. I still wouldn't have looked at you bad or wrong or anything, but I just wouldn't have heard everything by then. Believe me, I've heard just about anything you can imagine. okay? Or at least something in like kind is whatever it is you would say, all right? There's probably nothing that I have not counseled. And you might be thinking, oh yeah, no, I'm telling you. Okay, we've heard it all. Why? Because we have real people in the congregation, and they have real problems just like you do, and been through real experiences just like you do. And that's important that we understand that, all right? All right, next.
From Michael, says, is protesting for rights a sign of fear, or is it not ideal to attend protests if we are on, in this walk?
Okay, so fear is not an action, okay? Fear is the motivator of the action, or at least a potential motivator, right? So you can do a lot of different actions and they could be motivated by fear, or you could have another motivation to do the same action. Okay, the same action can have more than one motivator. So somebody doesn't like something that's happening and they want to protest it, okay? You could be motivated by anger. You could be motivated by fear. There's a lot of things that could motivate you to protest, all right? You could be motivated by power and control. And so my concern would be, what's the motivator? If you see something that's out there that's wrong, or at least you think is wrong, and someone should speak up against it, I don't have a problem with you speaking up against things. Okay, you want to go to some rally somewhere to have your voice heard, especially, for example, if your kids are in public school and you want to go to the school board thing and speak up and be against some of the nonsense they want to share with your children that you think they shouldn't or whatever, go ahead. But don't be motivated by fear or anger or some negative emotion. Go there with the motivation of positively impacting something. It's the motivator that potentially is the problem. Does that answer the question? Does it make sense? All right? Because if you're going because you're afraid if you don't go, something worse is going to happen, or something's going to whatever, or you're protesting so something doesn't happen, but are you afraid of it? Okay, look, see, we have a book, Scriptures. In this book, it says that anything and everything that you can think of and things you can't even think of are coming. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. So are you afraid? No, you shouldn't be, because you know it's coming. You also know that in the end, it works out for you in your favor, if you hold the line and don't be afraid and all the other things. And so what bad thing are you afraid is going to happen worse than anything he's already telling you is going to happen? Does that make any sense? But yet we act all afraid. Then we all get like this, oh, you wait, come next year, the interim elections are going to be the most important thing, and then 2024, the election's going to, who cares who's president? Okay? It doesn't ultimately make any difference. Yes, short term it makes a little difference. But ultimately, everything he says in this book is going to still happen, isn't it? No matter who's president, no matter what's going on in world governments, it's going to happen. So I may prefer somebody to be in there who I think may make things a little better short term, because that gives me more time to get some things done in the short term. But I don't really care, if you understand what I'm saying. I wasn't, emotionally invested in who won between Trump and Biden, and I'm not going to really be emotionally invested in between who wins the next one. I will have an opinion as to which one would be better for me and everybody else, in my opinion, short term, but they're only in there for 4 or 8 years. There's only so much they can do, and it only takes 5 seconds, as we just learned, for one to undo everything the other one did. You couldn't even blink and it was over. So much for any value there, except for the short-term positive effect. Good news is it could be a short-term negative effect too, and then it could get positive again. But ultimately, it makes no difference. So we should not get so wrapped up in these things, because it all goes spiraling into the abyss at some point, and Yeshua comes and rescues us all, so to speak. All right? And I don't mean in a rapture way. I mean he rescues us, right short of there not being anybody left alive, okay? And then he rescues everybody at the same time. And so let's just be clear about that, because we can get really confused about things like, same thing like when we were dealing with the personalities and the color code things. The thing that's, the personality thing is teaching you is not behavior, it's the motivation of the behavior. Okay, reds, whites, blues, yellows are motivated by 4 different things. Okay, when you go to do a protest, what's motivating? When you go to do this or that, what's motivating it? Even when you come here on Saturday, why? What is motivating it? Are you here because you like the teaching? Are you here because you like the music? Are you here because you're being obedient? Are you here? What combination of motivators? I mean, what's the motive? Why did you move here, for those of you that moved here? I think a lot of people had less than ideal motivations for why they came, and that's why they didn't stay. If their motivation was right, they'd have stayed. But they came for the wrong reasons, they left. Okay? I'm not picking on them. You got to check yourself and see, what's the driver? And so when you're going to protest, for example, in this question, what's driving that? If it's fear, it's wrong. If it's you're wanting to make sure that a voice is heard because you have an opportunity and that maybe positive effect can come short term, ultimately it all goes bad. That doesn't mean we should not try to have it be good in the short term. So let's make the effort for things to be good in the short term. Okay? Don't be all fatalistic and say, well, it all goes bad, so I might as well just quit now. Because you may have a lot longer than you think. So make the effort for things to be good while you have that time for it to be good. Knowing full well that ultimately it will not make a difference, but in the short term it can. So do it. Do those things that can give you those positives. And if you think that you could be a positive out there by being an advocate for some, issue that's out there, to speak up, I think it'd be great if all of the medical people and other people out there that know the truth about what's going on with the jab and everything would speak up more. All right? I think that all those people who lost their job in the medical professions and the police and the fire, they should all be out there making loud protests and making it clear why they did what they did. Instead of just being a statistic, Because all we get is that little statistic on only certain news programs, 15,000 blah, blah, blah just lost their jobs. Well, where are those 15,000 not standing together somewhere in Washington protesting with a microphone and a platform and saying, by the way, to the world, you need to know why we're unemployed right now. Okay? So, but that wouldn't be out of fear. That'd be out of getting information out there that people can understand and make their own choices about things. Like maybe voting some people out of office who put this nonsense in place. Oh, you want to know how you can have a voice? Everybody that doesn't want to get jabbed, why don't we all just go on strike and let them see what a shutdown looks like? I'm serious. You want to fire us all? Okay, good. We'll all quit. Now what are you going to do? All those millions of people are going to just stop working. Now you're all shut down. You want to shut us down and make it inconvenient anyway? Fine, let's shut it down and see how you really like it. We'll shut the whole thing down. Why not? Okay? I mean, they want to play, let's play. But you're just going to sit there and whine and complain that you lost your job. Well, let's get enough voices together. Maybe something can be, again, short term, right? Only be a short term effect. Long term, this needs Yeshua to return. There's no getting around that. That's the long term future. We know that's coming. It might not be coming for a while. I know everybody loves to call this end times already, and they're all jumping on the bandwagon and signing the mark of the beast and the buying and selling and the vaccine passport stuff and everything else. Don't get sucked into all that, all right? Whatever it is, and we'll know better 2020 hindsight than anything else, okay? Nowhere in there does it say that you're going to know for sure what it is while you're in it. Once you see certain things play out, you'll know you're in it, but those things haven't played out yet. Okay? So there are some very obvious things, but they have to take a while to play out. All right, and we're almost running out of time. Okay, did you have a question too? Okay, one more from you, Rob.
From Rabbi Tom, where does any form of PTSD fit in with what you said today? Does PTSD signify lack of love or an imperfect love for Yahweh and the Torah for each other.
No. All right, so PTSD is a post-traumatic, it's an event that happened in your life that can be triggered, okay? And so what you need to do, though, is recognize that that is a negative in your life, and therefore you should be doing what you can to unwrap or defuse the trigger. And that's not easy to do, because some of those are very deep-seated, horrible traumas. But most of what I was talking about the people that don't want to come and get counsel is because they don't want to deal with and bring out and the stuff that was the major trauma that's causing them all this problem. Like this lady having her life, basically, she says, was ruined for the last 63 years. She's 70 years old or whatever it was because of something happened when she was 7. That's how, in her mind, and literally in a lot of ways, how horrible this thing was that happened to her, right? But yet, she's allowing that thing to continue to whatever that person did to her was horrible. But should it still be horrible at 60 and 70? Do you allow that damage to keep increasing? Wasn't it bad enough, the damage that happened when you were 7? At some point, can you minimize it getting, affecting everything in the future? And so that's what the PTSD is it's a post-traumatic response, a stress response to something happening that feels like you're back where you were when the other thing happened, and so you now feel and respond like you were then. Okay? All right? And it's terrible. My daughter fell and broke her arm, and then that was at a feast. A couple of feasts later, she fell and hurt herself. Wasn't that bad, but my wife had a PTSD response. And that's not embarrassing or anything. I'm just saying but she just went right back to that place when she had broken her arm. And you can't control that. But at some point you can start to, if you work on it with someone professional, you can work on going to that thing and unraveling it so it doesn't trigger as much. I don't know how you do that. There's a lot of people out there that do PTSD counseling, and there's ways to do this. But that's not going to keep you out of the kingdom, and it's not a fear problem necessarily. It's a triggered emotional response. It's not something that you're just walking around thinking about all the time. Something has to happen that puts you in a sense that it's the same as something else that happened, and now you're responding as if it was the other thing, okay? Because it could be a smell, it could be a sound, it could be something physically that's happening that puts you right back there. And now you're responding as if you're there, not based on what's actually happening now, okay? All right, will that be it for you, Rob? I got one more here, and then we're good, okay. Sorry for you on live stream, we didn't get to as many as I'd like. Maybe next week we'll start with live stream. Okay, and we'll finish with you, Mercy. Oh, Janet, sorry.
Sorry, Rabbi.
That's okay.
Yeah, I just had a thought that triggered in my head when you were talking about how he gave us a length of years, right? To demonstrate to him if we can be trustworthy, I guess, to spend the rest of eternity with him. And I thought about the tree of life. Is that the reason why Adam and Eve were kind of put out from the garden? I mean, I know there was a transgression, but was the tree of life supposed to be like a life, given for eternity at the beginning?
Yes. I mean, that was the metaphor there, and that's what they were trying to show.
And I have one question about 4:11. Clarification question 4:15, when it says confess, is it talking about not just the name, but actually confess our sins, right, to him?
Well, I explained confess in the teaching. You'll have to go back.
Okay, because I missed that. And the last one is 4:11. I just thought about when it says, if you love Elohim, we ought to love each other. And in that loving each other, I was thinking about how there has to be some maturity for us to love, to put our emotions on the side so that we can truly embrace that love that he has for us, that we can have for each other. That's all I have.
Amen. Amen. Okay, Mercy. You get to be last.
Okay. So I have two questions for you. The first one is confess. Could that confess in 1 John chapter 4? Could that also be like a Shema? Because I know you made a lot of reference into doing, so it just made me think Shema, hear and obey.
Well, yeah, I think that's kind of the way I explained it. That's
Okay.
a lot of the, in other words, making it, it's walking the talk. So Shema has an idea of hearing it and doing it, but this is more like saying it and doing it.
Okay.
Okay.
And the last one is, I know you touched on it last week. I still didn't connect the dots from it. So can you elaborate just a little bit in terms of what it really truly means to lay down your life for your brother? Is it metaphorical, or was it more like, esteem others over yourself? Or I can't imagine it being actually literal unless you're Yeshua, but can you elaborate on that just a little bit more?
No, look, it's the same thing I was just saying about the relationship, right? Based on you have a different relationship with someone you barely know, as like an acquaintance, versus someone that you're best friends with, versus someone who you're married to. There's different levels of relationships, right? So based on your relationship, laying down your life for your brother may be like preferring them over you on a situation, letting them have their way over your having your way. Okay, that may be on a very basic level. Although you get to the highest levels of it, you would literally, like a husband for a wife, I would step in front of anything for her, right? Okay, so I literally would lay down my life for her. Now, I may not do that as quickly for you if we don't have that level of relationship yet, but there are things that I would do appropriately for you where the choice is you or me. Basically, that's where it comes down to, and I put you first. Okay? Now, I may not put the you or me choice first, life or death, if I don't have that relationship with you at this point. But I may put the you and me preference over, something much, on a lower scale. And that's where it has to do with, like you said, esteeming others above yourselves. But it's appropriate in a level, like grading on a curve based on your level of relationship. The expectation would be literally laying down your life on the highest level. But there are other things that you can do that are along those thematically similar, but appropriate to that relationship. Okay, good. All right. I hope everybody enjoyed that. It was good.